my name is Dylan. I'm 20, and I'm probably the stupidest person on the entire planet. I got a huge tattoo on my chest with my girlfriend's name on it, and, well, this is only the beginning of this idiotic story. I had been dating my girlfriend Ellie for 2 years. We met when I was trying to do tricks on my BMX bike without using my hands. And I took a pretty spectacular fall, almost hitting her, but I flew right past her. She was super angry at me, and my best friend Timothy couldn't stop laughing. After that, her and I talked, and we kinda started to date. A little while into the courtship, I felt like she was starting to distance herself from me. And I thought it was because I wasn't doing anything romantic. And I loved her very much and wanted to marry her in the future and have kids and stuff like that. So I talked with my friends and did something completely idiotic. I went to my friend who was doing tattoos out of his basement and got a tattoo. Afterward, I saw Ellie, and I thought she looked kind of sad, so I decided to reveal my sweet new tattoo. I unbuttoned my shirt, and voila! There were massive letters on my chest spelling Ellie. And she looked at the tattoo in complete horror, and then suddenly started to cry. At first, I thought that she was touched by my romantic gesture, and I tried to hug her, but she shrugged me off and started kind of screaming. And that was super unexpected. She revealed that for the last few months, she was cheating on me with Timothy. She had an affair with my best friend. My best friend since kindergarten. I was so shocked that I couldn't even form words to say anything back to her, so instead I was just staring at Ellie in disbelief. She kept crying and apologizing to me while continuing to stare at my awkward tattoo. At that moment, I knew I had made a huge mistake, and I left as soon as possible because I didn't want Ellie to see me cry. So over the next few weeks, I stayed at home crying over losing my girlfriend, my best friend, and last but not least, this big stupid tattoo on my chest that I have to see every time I look into the mirror. And I'd spent so much money on it, I couldn't even afford to think about starting to remove it. But my friends were there for me and dragged me out to a bar to help cheer me up. I was resisting, but it ended up being an awesome night. It was the first time I'd talked with anyone in those 2 weeks, and I was finally able to take my mind off my mistake. When I had had too many drinks, I stepped outside to breathe some fresh air, and a cute girl started talking to me. She had the hiccups and was trying to get rid of them, and I tried to help her by giving her advice. We held our breath together, and then I tried to scare her by shouting, "Boo!" Nothing helped. We ended up laughing and talking, and even after my friends left, I stayed with her. And at some point, she started to complain that guys nowadays are not very romantic or emotional, and that her ex-boyfriends were super boring. She really caught my interest, so I asked for her name. And it was... wait for it. Ellie! I was completely shocked by this turn of events. Some kind of higher power was helping me, and I immediately hatched a plan to use my tattoo for a second time. So I asked for her number and Insta, and we kind of began dating. We kissed on our second date, and I felt like she wanted something more. But then she would see my tattoo, and it was too early for that. So I said to her that I want to take it slow. You know, do romantic stuff and treat her right. Of course, this wasn't the real reason for that. But after a month of dating, she didn't want to wait anymore. So I knew it was time to show her how romantic I was. So I told her I loved her, unbuttoned my shirt, and once again revealed my Ellie tattoo. It felt wrong because at this point, I didn't really love her. Anyways, the same with Ellie number 1. Ellie number 2 looked at it with complete horror. She basically froze. Her eyes widened. She didn't really know how to react to something like that. I started to worry I'd embarrassed myself a second time. And then she got overwhelmed and told me that she needed to leave. I tried to stop her and grabbed her hand, but she was basically running away from me. I was so devastated, and she didn't respond to any of my messages for a week, so I was back to being super depressed again. But after a week, she called me. She was overwhelmed and weirded out by my tattoo at first. Nobody had ever done something so romantic for her before. And we'd only been dating for a month. But then, she couldn't stop thinking about me and what I did, and so she really wanted to be with me. Even if it was a little bit weird, she still thought I was romantic and thoughtful. I was so happy, but also kind of anxious because this whole tattoo was a lie. We dated for 2 more months, and you know what? I actually did start to love Ellie. Everything was amazing, and I couldn't believe that she was even better than Ellie #1. And I really hoped that it would continue like this forever. But of course not! Ellie and I went to my friend's party, and you know who was there? Ellie #1 and Timothy. I thought my friends were smart enough to not invite them, but of course not. So I tried to stay away from them and keep them from noticing me to avoid an awkward situation. It was very weird and awkward how we moved through the room, hiding in the corners, only showing our backs to Ellie #1 and Timothy. My Ellie was so confused. I had to ease the tension somehow, so when Ellie #2 went to the toilet, I decided to approach Ellie #1 and Timothy and ask them to not reveal my embarrassing secret to my new girlfriend. Timothy was talking to other people, so I had a chance to talk with Ellie #1 one-on-one. And right when I was about to tell her everything, she asked me to go to a separate room. And I was like, what? Okay. It turns out Timothy wasn't paying much attention to her, and she was missing me, and she realized that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. I was shocked. And then she stepped closer to me and looked straight into my eyes. Oh, I knew this look, and I'd missed it. And then she slowly moved in to kiss me, and I almost kissed her back. Then I remembered about Ellie #2. I pushed her back, and she had this confused and slightly angry look on her face. And right at that moment, my current Ellie stepped into the room. "Who are you?" she shouted at Ellie #1. Ellie #1 answered, "Ellie?" And Ellie 2 was like, "No, I'm Ellie." And then it was like 10 seconds of complete awkward silence. And of course, it felt more like 10 hours of silence. The Ellies looked at me, then at each other, then at my chest. I felt so awkward. I wanted to disappear, to explode or something. My mind was racing, and I tried to come up with something to say. Something that would fix the situation, and fast. Bam! Ellie #1 splashed her drink in my face and left the room. And then, after 5 seconds of silence, bam again! Ellie #2 splashed her drink at me and left in tears as well. And there I was, alone, angry, and very stupid. How could I have messed everything up so badly? So, like any smart adult, I went home to rethink my situation. Not! Instead, I approached my friend who did my tattoo because he was at the party and asked him to change my tattoo a bit. And because I was drunk, I promised that I would pay him extra money for it later. So he agreed, and we went to his place right away. I'm not going to tell you how I changed it just yet. I carried on with my life, trying to be less stupid from that moment onward and finding closure about everything I had done. I was paying more attention to my studies and going out less. Basically, I was trying to be a normal human being. But of course, the only time that I went out during this period, I did something stupid again. You see, my friends and I went to the same place where I met Ellie #2, and she was there. Our eyes met, and I felt this knot in my chest. I knew I had to talk to her. So, I went up to her and apologized to her for lying and for being so stupid. I knew that my feelings toward her were genuine, and she smiled the whole time. We ended up talking the whole night, and I explained the whole situation to her. I couldn't help but notice how beautiful she looked that day, and I felt that I still loved her very much. So we went to her place, and I'd completely forgotten about the editing of my tattoo. We were kissing, and she removed my shirt, only to see these big, ugly, crooked letters on my chest that spelled, "I hate Ellies." Ellie stared at it in disbelief, followed by becoming super angry. She screamed at me while I tried to explain to her that it was just a mistake, But she'd already started throwing all of my clothes out of her window, and she lived on the 3rd floor. And then she started pushing me out of her place. As I was leaving and collecting my stuff, including my bag with a now broken laptop, her neighbors were staring at me from their windows like I was some kind of creep. While I was walking home, I decided that it was time to stop dating girls named Ellie. Now, I'm saving money to remove this tattoo for good. And although my friends still laugh at me every time we meet, soon, I think, I'll hopefully be able to laugh at this as well. What's the moral of this story? Don't be stupid!